Welcome, everybody. So for 10 points and a free tour guide trip to Salem, Oregon, name that band.
I usually Sam.
Huh? Anybody? It's one of my favorites.
Def Leppard.
Caedmon's Call. Yeah, out of Texas. All right, friends, glad you're here. What a great weekend. So you probably know we have 2 seminar times. The first one's going to start at 9 o'clock right now. We're going to go for 1 hour, and then we're going to take a 15-minute break, and we got all kinds of goodies out there. And I haven't partaken yet, but goodness sakes, do they look good. So you want to do that. Before we start today, I want to pray, and then I'm going to introduce our speaker. You might be aware that there was a shooting today in Pittsburgh at a synagogue. Multiple people dead, 3 police officers shot. I don't know about you, but it kind of feels like somewhere, I'm not sure what the year was or what the day was, but we went off the rails as a country, and man, we are just off the rails. So the only thing I know to do is pray to Jesus and love people. And so that's what we're about really this weekend, is learning just how to love people and learning how to, I just can't wait for this session, because the things that we're going to talk about are critical. And whether you're a parent or grandparent, as I am, it's going to be a special time. So let me pray, and then I will introduce our speaker. God, thank you for today. Our hearts are a little heavy as we heard about the news in Pittsburgh, and right now there's just all kinds of disaster going on. Police officers running around, wives being called that their husbands were shot. Some folks being called that they thought they were going to go to a synagogue today and worship God, and they ended up dying and meeting him face to face. And Lord, it's a chaotic situation, and I pray for cool heads. I pray, Father, for all of the folks in our country that every time they turn on the news, it seems like some catastrophic thing. And then when we come back and it's no longer catastrophic, it's just we're dealing with our own kids. And we're trying to figure out how to raise them to love you, Lord Jesus, and to be everything, God, that you have longed for them to be. So today we submit our time together to you that would happen. Thanks for this opportunity for Dr. Gilbert. Thanks, God, for our time. We entrust it to you in Christ's name. Amen. Dr. Gilbert, I think I met you probably 5-6 years ago. And he's one of those guys, you spend 5 minutes with him and you want to spend 5 hours. And he just is. He's that kind of guy. He's compelling in the way he loves his kids. He's compelling in the way, I can tell you, I'm a board member at Corbin University, and all you have to do is just run around and talk to students, and almost to the person, one of their favorite professors, one of their favorite classes. Of course, if you talk about sex, it's probably everybody's favorite class. That being the case, but the thing that I appreciate about him is he's so rock solid, and yet the thing that I'm hearing from students, and this is why I'm really excited about it, is when they struggle, they feel a safety to talk to this guy like none other. And that's a special thing, to have that kind of gifting where you're committed to the Word of God, committed to developing men and women, and yet people who struggle flock to him. So I'm very excited to introduce to you Dr. Corey Gilbert, who's going to be speaking. He's got a lot of information for you because he's doing a lot even outside of Corbin, and we'll hear probably a little bit more about that. He's got a book coming out. It's going to come out in a couple months.
Next few weeks, hopefully. But
next few
weeks.
weeks.
Wait on the publisher.
So that's cool because it's on this subject. So Dr. Gilbert, come and share with us.
Thank you. This feels weird. Okay, so we're going to dive in. This is a little too loud. There we go. First thing we're actually going to talk about and think through, and I actually want to use you to answer this question, is actually defining masculinity. I want you to help me define masculinity. What is masculine? Throw it out there. Muscular. Man, I'm already in trouble.
Testosterone.
Testosterone. Okay, I'm a little better.
Bravery.
What else?
Bravery.
Bravery.
Leader.
Bravery. Leader.
Male.
Male, okay. What else?
Motorcycles.
Yes. Let's just go to Harley. Yeah.
Ex-Navy.
Ex-Navy. I like that. Okay. Any others? Integrity. Okay. Listen to this definition real quick.
Masculine, adjective, having qualities or appearance traditionally associated with men, especially strength and aggressiveness.
And I'll play the rest in a minute. But think about this. This definition, so I actually looked it up. This is one of the many definitions of masculinity. Is this really masculinity? Or, and one of the things that I want us to kind of wrestle with today, is it this progression of what we've defined as masculinity that's actually probably one of the key pieces that's harming us? Defining what is masculine. Who are you? Who am I? One of the biggest questions I want us to kind of answer and be able to address is, when do I know I'm a male? Try to adjust this real quick. Male or female? How do I know I am who I'm supposed to be? We struggle with this as parents. So we actually end up, we've got to be able to define what is masculine and feminine to even start. And if we're not careful, what we do is we actually immediately go into pigeonholing names and titles and words that actually get us into trouble. My whole story is that. One of everything that would have been defined as male and masculine, I'm the opposite. Which didn't bode well when you look at the culture. It worries me to think of where I would be today if I was 12 today. What is masculine? What does Scripture say? Is there a difference? Or watch where this video actually goes when we actually think about what is masculine.
Some of the synonyms are macho, manly, muscular, well-built, red-blooded. Red-blooded? My goodness. Strapping, strong, brawny, powerful. None of these really sound like me. I think that definition is a little scary.
It's too small for something so big.
It's all about trying to get people to conform and be a certain way.
I think that's what gets us in trouble, is when we say that there's only one way to be a man.
So many individuals, they try and fit, and it just gets to a point where it's too much.
Where they are doing harm to each other and harm to themselves.
You don't have to do that. You define your own masculinity. You define who you are.
For me, being masculine is being honest.
This is the body that I have. This is what I know. So to me, this is what a man is.
For me, being masculine means being brave enough to be who I am.
Being able to smile, being able to cry, being able to love and be loved.
That's the man I want to be.
What does it mean to me to be masculine? It's more a question of what does it mean to be human?
It's funny, this is a clothing company, but I find that out towards the end. Oh, they're advertising clothes.
Selling clothes.
But they're really presenting an interesting question. That last phrase is what bothers me. It's not about masculinity, it's about what does it mean to be human? Because we're really attempting to get rid of gender. There is no difference. But what's interesting, if you actually look at treating you, if you have a physical disorder, and even mental health disorder, your biology matters so much in terms of that medication actually working. Biologically male, doesn't matter what you do, how you treat you really matters in terms of actually helping. We'll never eliminate masculinity and feminine, or male-female, as much as we're trying. But this masculine-feminine, it's under attack. Because I think we can't really answer this question. What does Scripture say is the difference? And as I've thought through this, and I'm going to kind of take you on a journey, but as I thought through this, I really wrestled with, every time I see a list in Scripture, it seemed to apply to everyone. When I think of strength, I go, well, we're all supposed to be strong. Most of you ladies could take me in a heartbeat. That's not the name or the title or the identity of masculinity. That's a problem. So what do we do with this? And I want to actually go back to Genesis. If you actually look at the fall, in Genesis, the curse for men and the curse for women. For men it was to work hard, to toil the land, and to work to keep it. For women it was actually increased pain in childbirth. And I really have a lot of questions about that myself. Why? What was the purpose behind that? Was it to make more of an attachment to that child? Because of the nature and what God wanted to do with women? Maybe. But there was a second part to the curse to women. Actually, Genesis 3:16, and you will desire to control your husband, that he will rule over you. This is actually disordered desires. I really think that one of our struggles in our culture, and for us, especially for men, and then the place we end up putting women, is men who don't actually step up and they're very passive, and women who actually honestly just take over because someone's got to lead. And this disordered desire, there's this natural order that we're actually in trouble with. So I want to kind of help you understand that. It goes further in James 1. It says right here, temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions. And when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. And then later in James 4, what is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Don't they come from the evil desires that war within you? You want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You are jealous of what others have, but you can't get it. So you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And one of the questions that I have still is, but what's the difference between male, female, masculine, and feminine? I actually had a student Thursday ask, can you be male and masculine? I was like, that's a really good question. And it really comes back to, how do you define it? How do you define what's masculine? Because again, I think where we go gets us into trouble. And as parents, part of our actions actually potentially set up this problem because of our own definitions and our own stories. One of the words, I actually had it up there and I skipped it. It's psychological determinism. This doctor said that he could give me any child from birth and I can make them into whatever I want to make him into. I can make him into a doctor, any job, any career, any identity. But one of the things that I've seen in some other studies was I can make them into that kind of person, but I can't make them a follower of Christ. I can't make them love Jesus. That's on your children. It's on my children. I can do everything in my power to try to guide them, but in the end, that part is up to them. But the other piece of that is a lot of the way we set our children up is for success or failure based off our definition of masculinity and femininity. Who should my son be? Who should my daughter be? I really believe that a lot of what drives this is some of these core terrors that we actually have, or fears. You and I, all of us, have these parts of us that are kind of against us, if you will. And I never would have picked this word, but for men, I saw this in multiple places. Larry Crabb was one of them and some others, but he actually had the word weightlessness. Like, what is weightlessness? I don't have what it takes. I don't have what it takes. Who am I to stand up here and do this? Oh, I don't have what it takes. Who am I to be a dad? Who am I to be a husband? Who am I to fill in the blank? We actually really wrestle with this, I think, at the core level of who we are. And this makes us ask questions constantly. This gets to identity, which we'll talk about this further on this weekend. But for women, another one, a word that came, and again, multiple places that I wouldn't have landed on, was invisibility. And I'm thinking of my wife. When I met her, she was someone who, this would have been a wonderful word. Because she's quiet, she's an introvert, and she would love to just hide. But that's not what this is talking about. Being open and inviting. An invitation with no response. So think about those pictures. That who I am as a male and as a female, there's a different dance, if you will, or a different way that we interact. There's something in our culture when it comes to relationships that we've actually seen that when a man pursues, there's something different about that relationship versus when a woman pursues. Now, my wife gets, it's funny as we tell the story of how we met, because we met online and she actually emailed first. And so I'm like, you pursued? No, she didn't pursue. She just went, hi, it just happened to be digitally. I pursued. And it's funny to see that actually when couples come together, when she tends to pursue, it doesn't tend to always last. As in maybe there is something in the rhythm of how God designed us and who we should be as men and as women. So I want to show a whole bunch of words just for you to think about masculinity and femininity from a little bit different angle, if you will. Looking at boys first and manhood. Think of these words. Act like a man, or be strong in your faith. And that first one, act like a man, well, what kind of man? What does that mean to act like a man? I don't know about where you've been or where your kids have been, but we'll play that out. We will play out even our own internal struggle of what that means if we don't have a good definition, a good place to land. What does Scripture say about who I am to be as a man? And what does Scripture say as to who I am to be as a female? What does it mean to be feminine? These next words are really interesting. Selfless. Sacrifices for. Walks in authority, but also respects authority. Taking on others' sins. That's interesting. Maybe what it means to be a man is someone who actually doesn't fight for my right to be right, but actually comes alongside people and actually takes on their struggle and takes on their burden. What's funny is my first thought is, wow, that's the role of a counselor. That's the role of a teacher sometimes when they're under fire. That's ministry. But yet, if we think about our definition of masculinity and boy and man, we tend to go to macho stuff and we go to places that actually don't help. And if you think of raising children, a lot of the choices we make set them up in a certain direction. Like, how good are you at that sport? It's been really neat to talk to Corbin students who actually, they're there to play a sport, but they know that there's a shelf life to that. That in a few years, I'm done. And I'm going to be moving on to the next phase of life. Versus this, it's so entrenched in my identity, I don't know who else I am. Which is that disordered piece. How do I keep that in balance? And I actually think the answer to that is us parents. It's not our sons and daughters. It's us and what we actually worship. What do I worship? Because for a lot of us, what we worship is sports or musical talent or other things that are good, but they go too far. They're disordered. And I want us to be able to think through this a little more deeply. As I look at these words, think of a man that honors God, that loves his family, loves his children, serves his children. He's a leader, and I love this one. Be home men. Every bit of data shows that one of the most imperative roles of children growing up well is their father. As much as we talk and do amazing Mother's Day celebrations and then we diss fathers, the most critical role is fathers in the development of children. Actually, I had a pastor mention this to my wife in a Bible study one time. He said that children always tend to grow up and worship what dad worships. Mom can take them to church every single Sunday, and it's funny how easily bent the children would be to worship whatever dad worships. That's scary. As a dad, that's terrifying to think that I have that kind of influence. But then again, it makes me step back and go, so what's the difference in masculine and feminine, male, female, husband, wife? And how do I instill that in my sons? And how do I help my daughter? And where am I missing it? when it comes to the development of these characteristics that are critical, not these ones that are actually superficial, which is actually, I think, where we spend most of our time. A man controls his emotions and passions. He provides for his family, protects, serves, and leads. Follows God's design for true masculinity. Except, then we're stuck again. What is true masculinity? It's almost like we're back to this square one. What does it mean to be a man? And hopefully we'll answer that. Let's look at the feminine side. For women, I found this really neat acrostic. Some blogger had put this together, and just it helped me a lot to think through these keywords. So she had the word brave, and then these key phrases: bold girl, being countercultural. That a woman of God, especially today, is someone who's actually making choices very different than those friends around her. If you think of raising your daughter or being a godly woman, she's radical. She has purpose apart from herself in this selfie generation, this generation that's all about myself. There's something about that kind of woman and the beauty there. She's anchored. She gets into God's Word, vigilant that there are lies about who she should be and who she thinks she might even be. That Satan's out to get her. And then she is empowered. She's confident. Unapologetically, she's confident. And if you think of the demands and the pressures on women, we're a mess. Masculine and feminine we're trying to blur them together. And I think we've actually come from a culture of where Jesus came in Matthew 19 and literally raised women out of being property and saying you're equal heirs at the foot of the cross, but you're different. To the point now where we cannot celebrate that difference. It's actually almost it's just unacceptable to define a difference. That maybe we have different roles. And it's interesting to think of husbands and wives who maybe both work and see that who still does the majority of the housework and home stuff. It's so weird. And my wife and I have been in different seasons when she and I were 4 kids and we had 2 jobs, and I did most of the housework because I was at home. Like, it's not just about that. But my daughter the other day was standing at the stove stirring something going, I'm doing women's work. And I was like, says who? And so we talked through, that's not women's work. Women do that, but careful with that, realizing that this little moment is a micro conversation that changes my daughter depending on how we play it. And my sons do the same thing when they call people names. You're a girl. Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, I guess, elevation at this point, because it seems like men are down here at times. Another key ones here: God honoring, submitting, a word that we don't like. My human sexuality, or actually my marital class at Corbin, it's been interesting over the years to see, because I use this book that no one likes at first, and then some do later. But a student years ago pointed out, and they said, the ones that don't like this book, who it puts the bar really high about what excellent wife is. They said the ones that don't like it are actually detached. They don't have a relationship. There's no prospects. And the ones that like it are actually in a safe, good relationship. Like, for a lot of us, part of our struggle is our own story where we've not had a good father, we've not had a good mother, we've not had good examples, we've not been in good relationships. And it's just more data that just beats us down. I can't trust men. I can't trust. Every woman's going to cheat on you. That kind of thing. I remember walking into the dining room of my grandparents' house, and my uncle, who was an alcoholic, telling my dad, holding some bottle of some yellow something, don't you ever trust that wife of yours. She'll ruin you one day. So jaded. I found out years later he was actually a clinical psychologist. All I knew was this drunk that when he died, no one went to his funeral. No one cared. It was heartbreaking. And the irony is, for him, is he married this woman who actually was an alcoholic. And it was just downhill. one of the things that I really believe is part of our setting up of our children is to set them up to really marry well. Who they marry is so critical. And if they don't marry, who they are still matters. As a single adult, long before I met my wife, I'm in private practice, I'm counseling, I'm in ministry, I'm doing stuff. Was my life on hold until I married? I'm glad I didn't do that. I see that a lot. What's funny is the women that were attractive to me were the ones, I remember one particular, I called her, or I met her at a Bible study, and every time I called her, it was like, sorry, I'm too busy. Because she was involved in this ministry, and this ministry, and this ministry, and this ministry. She was so busy serving. I'm like, oh, you're so much more attractive now. But then I realized why, because that's what was instilled in me from my family. What is attractive? Versus where we get hung up big time. Micah 6:8, no, O people, the Lord has told you what is good, and this is what he requires of you. To do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Can I do that? And it's like we're still in the middle of this in a sense, because these apply both ways. But let me kind of twist it when I look at the opposite end of this. If you want a list of where we can start as parents, here's our pitfalls. And Zimbardo, in his research, very recent, actually in the last few months, came out with this, and he's got a lot of other stuff that's led to this. But look at this list of where men get stuck. Men today are saying no to education. They're saying no to working. As in their mother's basement's open, which we should probably flood and edge them out. Excessive maleness, this hyper-masculinity that's actually abusive, that's domineering, that's harming people, that's basically bullying because they're scared. Excessive gaming. Video games aren't wrong. They're actually a great stress reliever for some people. Great. But it's the excessive. It's when I go, friend or game, I'm going to the game. It's when I'm choosing, when I have a choice, and I choose screen time, if you will. Same for porn. This is becoming so rampant. And what worries me about the porn one is, and we could talk for hours on that, is they're not looking at naked people. Like in one sense, I'd be like, okay, they're looking at graphic videos from day one, because on 2 clicks on your phone, you're on some of the worst places you could be. That's going to rewire your brain and set you up for failure. This is serious. Obesity, high, welcome to Oregon. High as a kite, drugs, just escape, numb, selfish passivity, or aggression. This is our men. This is, if you look at the generation coming up, and even some of the current, in some sense I'd go, this isn't on them, this is on the parents of the raising of these children. But at the same time, as I talk to my 12-year-old, I'm reminding him, you're your own person. Even at 12, you still make your own decision. I'm going to keep trying to guide you, but at 12, my guiding is a little less listened to than guiding from friends. I think that's a natural part of growing up. And actually, one of the things I tell parents all the time is expect to be done parenting by about 10 or 11. And they go, ugh. It's like, actually, yeah, because by 10 or 11, their personality is pretty much set in place. And about the only thing that changes that is trauma. So if you want to know what to pray for, it's trauma. God, take them out if you have to. Take them down. Cut them to size if that's what's going to bring them back to you. If that's your primary priority. Our children are hurting because of a lack of guidance, actually. But that's where we're at. Our kids say, well, I need my privacy. It's like, well, when you move out, you'll get it. Or how far do you go with that? Because I've seen some kids where the parents remove the doors off the bathroom and their bedroom, and it's like, okay, now we're crossing a line. And so you can take all this too far. How do you love them into a biblical masculinity and femininity, biblical living, a beautiful life, but realizing that they have to choose it? For women, look at this list. 3 really critical things. Comparison. For identity, disordered desire for approval and validation. It's all about competition. Women beat themselves up. Not all of them, but this is very common. I think it's actually that word's getting worse for men too. But comparison, well, I'll get to that in a second. Perfectionism, disordered desire for righteousness and perfection apart from God, or apart from Christ. And unbiblical submission. Believing that I'm supposed to be this wife who just is quiet and does nothing or says nothing and lives out in a very abusive relationship. And not understanding my role, my critical role in my relationship, maybe with my husband or earlier boyfriend, that it isn't one of just no voice, and because of something that has birthed inside of them about what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman. Well, he's supposed to lead. What if he's not leading? Does that mean you do nothing? Well, my husband's supposed to be the spiritual leader of our home, and I'm doing Bible studies with my family, so maybe I'm being a bad wife or a bad mom. Like, no, you're playing out your role and he's failing. And or he's still the spiritual barometer of your family. He still is. Those kids are still watching, even if he's staying home or if he's absent or whatever else his priorities are. Look at the difference in these lists. This one seems to be a lot of not doing. And this one seems to be a lot of almost obsessing. And does that say something about us? Okay, go back to Genesis. The second part of the curse on women. Actually on all of us. That men, if we're not careful, we're just going to lay down and go, all right, whatever. And women are going to go, okay, step in. Why? Because I think there's a difference in the way that we're supposed to play this out. I was actually part of a Bible study in Dallas, Texas, right before I met Kelly. And it was, the way they did small groups, this is at Fellowship Church in Dallas, you grew and split. It was a constant. Kind of that's the model they used. And so this was a whole bunch of professionals in their 20s, singles. And when I arrived, we were like 2 weeks out from splitting into 3. So I walk in this house full of these professionals, and this woman got up and started speaking. And she goes, guys, we have been trying to push this small group to grow and to reach the lost, to change lives, to be men and women that love God. You know when this actually happened in our group? When us ladies stopped pushing and let those 2 men right there, and she pointed at these 2 young, I think they were pre-med guys. When they stepped up, our group exploded. I think there's something beautiful about that. And some data there to think about as to what it means to be different. Here's the way this tends to play out, and I think this applies to both of us, men and women. But think about these words. If we're not careful, we end up in these places. The shallow man, the secularized man, or the spiritually addicted man. We become a Christian, but we're this deep and our world's all about everything else. The secularized man, that you're out conquering the world in your business, let's say. And I'll show up and do church. The spiritually addicted man, we know those. Some of us have been that. We're at everything the church has, but our faith is about that deep. And what I'm going to propose is actually a very different wording for who you and I should be. And it's actually the sincerely struggling man. One of the things that I feel like our world is lacking is honesty about the fact that we're fellow travelers. We don't have it all together. If you think of those that are outside of the church looking in, it's like it's all these seemingly perfect people that they go and they're all a facade. They know. So what if we were that sincerely struggling man? And think of these two, this verse, Romans 7:15, something that this person would say throughout their whole life. I don't really understand myself, for I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. For life, this person says, I am on this journey and I am struggling and I'm fighting, which makes me look at anyone, in any area that you might wrestle with, what's God doing in that? How's God redeeming? How are you putting that under, and I'm going to say that word, submission to Christ? That's the where I think we struggle. All of us, without exception. We get focused in on certain little areas, and I think we miss the heart of people. This person, this sincerely struggling Christian, will not live sinlessly, will fail badly. Can we actually admit that? Will fail badly in how he relates. One of the key areas that we play out in relationships. Will struggle mightily against sin, always longing to know the power to live a holy life. What does that look like? Will hate everything sinful, even while he is powerfully drawn to its pleasures. And what is our bent? What is our bent? Our selfish goals are these two areas: to live according to values that I naturally embrace, so that my life goes well according to preferences that honor me. If you think of your theology, your beliefs about even masculinity and femininity, a lot of it's driven by our story. As I struggled with knowing who I was in my teens and 20s, that identity piece, it's amazing how much that shapes theology. When I look at the world and go, well, that's what they're defining as male and masculine, and I'm all not that, then I must not be. Or I don't know who I am, or I'm a miserable, miserable, miserable failure, or I shouldn't be here. Which, for me, led to multiple suicide attempts and other needs for medication and things like that, trying to figure out. And it was also mixed with culture shock of just moving to America and so many other layers of stuff. It's usually a lot more not as simple. Another one, though, is to depend on whatever means are at my disposal and under my control that promise to relieve both discomfort brought on by difficult circumstances and emotional suffering that is occasioned by unmet desires. We're disordered. All of us are disordered. I want more, or I don't know what I want, and so I just kind of am. 70% of Americans hate their jobs. And they go in every day and they punch a clock, they check in, they check out. And then I see them going home when their parents or their kids are looking at them like, why would I ever want to be like them? Versus men and women that actually love their life and their job and their relationships and all these layers of who we are, as we're modeling for our kids what it means to be a dad, to be a husband, be a wife, a mom, what it means to struggle, what it means to go through cancer, what it means to go through pain, what it means to go through loss, what it means to, we just bought that house and now we have to move because of, and we do this together as a family. That shapes our children. You can raise them like this, that they know how to love motorcycles and wear their pink little Harley outfits and know how to shoot Nerf guns. You know, you raise them right. That's my daughter, Maya. And what we are interested in, this is back to that psychological determinism. My daughter from a year early, like 1 or 2, she could hear the sound of my motorcycle coming. Daddy? Well, most kids can't do that. Well, she's mine. And every one of us shape our kids in different bents. Because it's funny to watch my kids when it comes to sports. Not really that big of a deal. Why? Because it's not to me. My kids will never be the next piano concert pianist. I was a music major in college. It would be great for them to do that. But I think we missed a step. Oh yeah, lessons. And it became one of those, like, who they are because of Kelly and I actually was kind of scary. How much control or power you have there, but also to realize how little power you have. So some things to think about, practical application of this. I love these 2 words, responsibility and resiliency. Part of what we do is we've got to be able to give our kids responsibility. That's what I'm seeing lacking when it comes to raising children. They are not responsible, and then they grow up and no wonder they're still not responsible. And they need it earlier on. We found this out the hard way, or interesting way. This past summer, kids went off to Texas. Kelly and I were focused on a conference coming up that I was speaking at, and for 10 days, there were no kids. And then Alex flew back in, we picked him up from the airport, and he walked in the kitchen, and for 10 days, we had not touched the kitchen. We had just let everything pile up. That's not Kelly and I's job. It's theirs. So we're like, Alex! Sorry. Go for it. Because it was highlighted, the fact that we do not do that. That is their job. When we literally didn't do it when they weren't there. So I'm sure the toilets and bathrooms are really bad too. And so you see that. If you step in and have to do it every time, that impacts responsibility. Well, that other word, resiliency, though, ouch. They're going to have to go through hard stuff. They're going to have to struggle. They're going to have to wrestle. And if I'm protecting them from that, they are not growing in that strength that they actually need as men and women that are image bearers. And I would even say gendered image bearers. That men, we image Christ in a different way than women do. Women, you image Christ in a different way than men do. And how can we celebrate that? How can we actually be thankful for those differences? It's like my wife and I trying to compare jobs right now. And she stays at home and she homeschools and her job is no thanks in a sense, 24/7, no boundaries, if you will. There is no comparison of these. The burden is incredible, but yet we do that. When she first started staying home, it was this. She actually struggled with, if I'm not bringing in a paycheck, I don't have value. It's like, culture, ouch. And now it's funny to watch her not care at all because she's in a beautiful place. We go to Titus 2. Titus 2 actually gives us a very good side-by-side description of masculine and feminine. And I'm going to separate them out and I'm going to show you. This is actually probably one of the best places for us to land. What does it mean to be man? What does it mean to be woman? Masculine and feminine. And what are some of the similarities, but also some of the differences? So actually, Titus 2, for men, it's verses 2, 6, 7, and 8. So it says this: teach the older men to be temperate, worthy of respect, self-controlled, and sound in faith, in love and endurance. Similarly, encourage the young men to be self-controlled. And everything set them an example by doing what is good. In your teaching, show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about us. And we'll come back to this in a second. For the women, likewise teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, to not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can urge the young women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled, pure, busy at home, kind, subject to their husbands, so that no one will malign the word of God. So think about this list. So for men, this is the list. Temperate, worthy of respect, self-controlled. If you want a list of what you need to be doing for your young men, there's actually two that are common in this list. Self-control is mentioned both times. And then teaching. I think it's interesting. We're both leaders. Men and women are leaders in different ways. And teachers. We're shaping the culture around us. In our teaching, show integrity, seriousness, soundness of speech. When I look at this list and I look at the men that I know, it's interesting to look at the separation. Those that I would respect and look up to. And a lot of the ones that the world puts on pedestals that don't live up to any of this. And then again, it makes me ask this question about masculinity. What does it mean to be a man? Selfless, sacrificing of self. As a husband, it means that I actually don't put my hobbies and desires and all these other things and even work above my family. Man, it's hard. I've even had couples in premarital counseling tell me, as we've talked through, and again, I give examples of my wife and I, and they're like, no, we're supposed to come together and she's supposed to go do her thing and I go do my thing and we come back together. And I'm like, y'all can settle for that if you want. Wouldn't it be amazing to actually merge lives together? Not that you like the same things, but you're doing life and you look forward to coming home to your husband, to your wife, and you enjoy their fellowship, their companionship. And that you actually do things with them because you actually love them, even if you don't like it. And vice versa. There's something about this selfless that we don't even put on the radar. For if you want to know what a man is, it's someone who actually dies to himself. 80% of couples that come together, he has the higher sex drive and she has the lower sex drive. 20% is the other way. Actually, he seems to have no sex drive, but God's sense of humor. And they come together and they get married, and there's a difference. Why? Because I think that also is meant to force us into relationship. Where we've been taught sex is something you do. No, it's something you are. Our sexuality, and it's to be stewarded. And in marriage, between a man and a woman, where it's actually meant to be, oh my goodness, the burden of it is tremendous. Why? Because it's not about the thing you do. It's about how I serve and love my husband, my wife. Who I am as masculine and who I am as feminine. That I'm actually not putting myself, my needs, my desires, my life, my job, anything over her. And I'm trying to help her have an amazing life as well. Now, the list for women, reverent in the way they live. It's interesting, not to be slanderers. Why would that be on that list? It's interesting to think about. One of the struggles many women might have is with their mouth. Not that men don't, goodness gracious. But I actually think that's interesting. I'm surprised at the next one, though. Is it okay for men to get sloshed and women need to be careful with your wine or something? But it's something to think about. What's the purpose? What's the purpose behind this list, not to be addicted to too much wine? Why would that be on there? I think it actually comes back down to self-control. They love their husbands and children. And it actually says, busy at home. Does that mean you have to be a homemaker? No. Not at all. I mean, you go to Proverbs 31 and look at that insane early morning, late night, forever, go. Yeah. But, and here's the really, I think, struggle for men and women. When I'm at work, I'm not with my family. And I'm always giving up something. Men and women alike. And what we have to really do is look at our priorities. For my wife and I, when we first found out Alex was coming, our first son, I was in and out of the hospital sick. And the decision was made. I would quit my job and stay home with our kids because one of us was going to be home. That was a priority for us. We lived in Mississippi. Hurricane Katrina hit. And we ended up pregnant. She's pregnant. We moved to Texas. Walked away from job. I was trying to finish my dissertation. And 6 months later, we were in a teaching position. And life was very different. Because the funny thing is when I turned in my resignation, my health got better. Because I was in a job outside of my calling, really. That the job actually asked me, will you please stop counseling people and actually focus here over on IT? And I was running the online program. And I wanted to hurt this guy. I'm like, no, this is what I love to do. That I teach so that I can then have one-on-one conversations. I do this. I like it a little bit. What I love is to talk to you one-on-one. I'm a shrink. I'm a counselor. And I want to walk alongside families and to love them into a hopefully much better way to honor God and honor their family and how they live. And if you look at this list, this is that bold one. What does it mean to be a godly woman? I don't think it has anything to do about a lot of the characteristics that many of us get wrapped up in when it comes to femininity. It's not because I like or don't like dresses or dressing up. It has nothing to do with this stuff. But that's where we get stuck. That's where we go back to that video in the beginning where it's, let's just redefine our masculinity. Why? Because aggression is bad. It's like, no. Aggression can be misguided. Actually, anger, this is how I grew up. Anger was sin. Anger equals sin. Not because that's what was taught to me, but that's what I heard. And then I remember getting into a relationship with this amazing woman, my wife, and her disagreeing with me. How dare you disagree with me? It's the end of the world. Fight. Which for us meant silence. And hours later, when we come out of that, one of her tests was, are you going to allow me to believe what I believe, or are you going to make me believe what you believe? Ooh, relationship. I had a lot of growing to do. And just a few months later, we were married, and yikes. Every one of us is in a different place personally, but in how we mentor our children, this is a critical element or aspect of raising kids. Can they be men and women that honor God with who they are? Gendered men, gendered women. Not, I'm in the wrong body. No, everything in me says I'm different. What am I going to do with that? I jokingly say, but it's not really a joke, I'm the girl in my marriage. Everything about me, with the things I like, the way I think, everything is female to an extent. And my wife is so the guy. She's the intellectual, analytical. She's got little boxes. She's got the nothing box. She goes into her. She can just not think. Like, how do you do that? Which is what you stereotypically say for men. But in the end, and one of the most beautiful things that I've learned in being married to her is I'm so the male and she's so the female. And it's so beautiful, this relationship. I don't know if I would have seen that before I met her. Because of my story and my twisted analysis of self, I was lost. What does it mean to be a man? I don't know. Am I supposed to like sports and do this and do that? Is that the definition? That's where we get stuck. As we parent and lead our children, we need to be able to help that 12-year-old who's struggling with their sexual identity actually realize that I understand that that's a struggle, but that isn't who you are, the struggle. Just like any kid who's dealing with porn, they're not that. I'm a struggler of porn. No, that is a part of me. What am I going to do with that? How am I going to submit that to Christ? And what I would dare say is every one of us in this room has areas right now that we need to do that with. And there's parts of us that we need to submit, give to God, because that's not who I'm meant to be. Does that mean that a guy can be really girly and a girl can be really masculine? Actually, absolutely. I think we're the whole spectrum in a sense, which if you look at the culture and our conversations about gender, I'm going, yes, there's a lot of truth to this. A lot of truth. And it's gone way too far. That most of the kids, the extreme majority, I even heard up to 95% of those that struggle with gender or the transgender, I'm in the wrong body. If you leave it alone, it actually works itself out to be they're the gender they are, that biological gender. It really does. What we've actually found is more harm comes from hormones and actually surgeries. And the jury is still out as to what do we do with that. But who are we to be as a church, which we'll talk about this weekend, this sermon this weekend. We're to be as a church someone that if someone walks in, no matter where they are on that journey, we love them right where they're at. Where they're at. And then we get to watch as God does a miracle in their life. Not fixing it, whatever it is, but loving them. Helping them love God and actually make that the centerpiece. Barna, in his research, actually found the critical category of how to raise kids isn't the jobs they get, isn't they get an education or they get married. It's are they champions for Christ? Everything else works itself out. Can I help my son or daughter leave my home and be on fire for you, God, a bigger purpose, bigger than myself. That's the critical place, the critical goal. That then I've raised a young man to be a godly man. It's going to play out in so many beautiful ways. And he's going to have so many different talents than other guys. Can he be proud of those and use those for God's glory? I'm going to help my daughter grow up to be an amazing woman that can be anywhere on that spectrum, if you will, but that she'll love God and she'll actually live for Him. And that's actually our goal. That's my desire for you when it comes to raising parents, raising kids that love God and they can live out this masculinity and femininity well. The struggle is we still almost haven't answered that question. What is masculinity? What is femininity? It's complicated. And it's been actually fun preparing for this, thinking through this even more deep, going, wow, this is so fascinating that we actually are stuck here. But it actually makes me go, no wonder we're stuck here in the culture. No wonder we're out in the culture. Can we give clear, concise, a man is this? No, actually we can't. Why? Because God's beautiful. You're beautiful. And the way you express that out and live that out, there are pieces of it that must be put under the authority of Christ. No, you're not anger. You're someone who's being angry that needs to put that under the authority of Christ. Fill in the blank. Who am I to be is critical. The slides, if you're interested in that, they're actually on my website, HealingLives.com, and you can actually download it. It's right there at the very top. If there's something helpful there. And there's other information, if there's anything there that could be of help. My heart and desire is to help parents when it comes to some of this, to help them lead. I do counseling and go in homes and do that, helping parents wrestle with either kids that are acting out or relationship stuff. My passion and desire is to work with actually parents, to help them lead their families. But I also have, oftentimes when there's perpetrator stuff going on, I work with the kids as well. But my desire is to help you do this well. If you know of people that need help, please get their information, my information to them. Because we need to be doing this well. I want our world to see Christians as doing this very well. Loving, serving, sacrificing, and being a very different. Because I think we are supposed to stand out. We're supposed to be different. And I wonder if we really are. We're doing all the same things like everyone else. So thank you for having me.